mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Kayang magiliw, telas ng sinakanan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyag ka ng magiting, sa manluluping, di ka pasisingil, sa nagatang tutok sa simoy at sa langit mong pagaw, ay hinatang tulang awit sa pagkayang minamahal. Ang isang ng matawad mo'y tagumpay na nagtitindig, makituwin at araw niya kailan ang ay di magtitindig. Lumang ang araw ng walhati't pagsinta, buhay langit sa piling mo. Ang inigaya ng pagkay mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Paano nga ba natin masasabi na ang mga magulang ay naging mabuti sa kanyang anak?
Hoy, kuya! Ito pala
Sa atensyong
nakahanda. Ay, dad, baon mo, ha?
binibigay nila? O hindi kaya
Anak?
sa pagtuturo ng tama at mali?
Ate, tapos na po ako. Salamat po.
Sapat na ba
Nak!
na sila ay tapat?
Sobra yung bayad mo. Ah, ganun po ba? Thank you po.
Para patunayan lang
Dito na ako, ma.
Uy, Dad.
na sila
Nakauwi ka na
Pagod
pala.
na ba?
ay karapat-dapat?
Anong ginagawa mo dyan? Kumain ka na ba? Tara, kain tayo sa loob.
Siguro nga
Uy,
masusukat
may bisita,
ang pagiging magulang
Kaya mas masarap kumain.
sa pag-aalaga sa kanilang
Sarap na
anak.
yan.
oo naman, no?
Thanks, ma.
Pero paano kung walang anak? Natutumbasan ng kanilang pag-aaruga.
Ang taas
Ano nangyari?
Kumusta anak namin? Kinalulungkot ko. Hindi na namin naagapan ang pagsali ng dugo. Naging matindi ang pagdurugo sa loob ng kanyang katawan. Dahilan nito ng kanyang tagli ang pagpanaw.
Ang sigurado ko lang, bago sila maging mabuting magulang, ay naging mabuti silang tao. Na kahit gaano kahirap ang buhay, ay hindi nila kayang gumawa ng mali. Hindi nanlalamang sa kapwa at handang tumulong sa nangangailangan. Kaya naman, sigurado ako na sila ay magiging mabuting magulang sa'yo. Bunso.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to INTELLICARE's HR Cafe. I am Maida Salugsugan, your host for the day and one of the sales intermediaries and advocate of INTELLICARE based here in Metro Manila. First of all, we would like to take this opportunity together with the whole INTELLICARE family to express our sincerest gratitude for joining us this afternoon in this webinar, which was conceptualized to foster better ties with businesses, ensuring human capital are empowered with various tools, knowledge, and resources, especially in the realm of holistic healthcare management. To adapt and cope with the lockdowns, we have taken a strategic turn to reach out and connect with you. Through our webinar series, we aim to provide partners with credible information and practical advice from key industries leaders that is conducted and organized by our head office and regional teams' collaborative efforts straight from the comforts of their homes. So to officially start this learning session, we would like to call on Mr. Ryan Navarro, our Senior Manager for the Regional Office.
Thank you very much, Miss Maida. Magandang araw, maayong adlaw, good day to everyone. It is with so much excitement to see a good number of attendees. No? As I speak, nagbibilang pa. No? As well as a number of distinguished guests this afternoon. And so let me welcome you all in the HR Cafe, a webinar series. To our partners gathered today, thank you for taking the time to join us. What we are about to discuss today is crucial, especially in relation to the formidable threat that the Delta variant poses upon our most precious resource, our people and our communities. The IntelliCare Group, IntelliCare, Aventus, Avega, is one in the call to get vaccinated. It is a crucial step in protecting our population from COVID-19. As a key player in the healthcare management landscape, we cannot properly care for our members and partners if our efforts and actions do not contribute to the collective effort against COVID-19. Our vaccination program is aptly named "A Jab is Our Job." It means doing our part in helping our government bridge the funding gap for COVID-19 vaccine procurement and accelerate the rollout to all priority groups, especially our own ranks. Through vaccination, we do our part in the fight while ensuring our operations and service are not compromised by the Delta variant. In short, by getting the job and doing our job of inoculating efficiently, we help build immunity in our workplace and in our communities. Aside from contributing to the collective efforts in protecting our population and reviving the national economy, we also do webinars to educate people properly about vaccinations, hopefully addressing vaccine hesitancy in the long run. This leads me to the topic for today's webinar. The shots have been called, breaking the myths behind COVID-19 vaccination. We will take you through a general overview of COVID-19, its transmission, symptoms, and other information. Also, the current context, situation, and statistics. From here, we dive into vaccination myths and facts, the types of vaccines out there, and some of the main brands of vaccines. I will not take your time any longer. It's time to call the shots and turn over the discussion to the trained professionals. We have Doctors Sally Gaspar and Cheryl Rueca and Miss Maria Angelica Patricia Concepcion to speak on us about this. Again, thank you all for being a part of this. Let's help build immunity for our community through vaccination and proper information. Back to you, Ms. Maida.
Thank you, Ryan Navarro. So once again, welcome to 800 participants from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. As we brace for the Delta variant, we would like to introduce the Aventus team headed by Dr. Sally Gaspar, AVP and Medical Director of Aventus Medical Care Incorporated, in tandem with Maria Angela Patricia Concepcion and the panelists, to guide and provide us information about vaccination grounded on sound facts. Take it away, Aventus team.
Thank you, Maida. Can we do a screen share, Sammy? Next slide, please. Next slide. So for today, we are going to speak about what is COVID-19, some statistics, and of course, some different variants and some surveys and myths and facts about the COVID-19 vaccination. We would also discuss about some action plans and the stages of the vaccine roadmap. Next slide, please. So let us start with a short review of what COVID-19 is. SARS-CoV-2, or the Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome coronavirus 2, is a virus that causes the COVID-19 disease. It was actually first isolated from 3 people with pneumonia connected to the cluster of acute respiratory illnesses cases in Wuhan, China. The virus is primarily spread through respiratory droplets when an infected person speaks, coughs, or sneezes. Now, the transmission can also happen with contact through fomites that can enter the mouth, the eyes, or the noses of people, as well as surfaces up to 1 meter away. The World Health Organization also added airborne transmission via microdroplet transmission of COVID-19. Studies reveal that airborne transmission may be possible in healthcare settings during aerosol-generating procedures, such as nebulization, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, endotracheal intubation, suctioning of secretions. It may also occur in small, close, and confined spaces with little or no ventilation. Now, the next question is, so what are the symptoms? The symptoms can take up to 14 days from infection to show. The most common symptoms are fever, not necessarily high fever, dry cough, tiredness or fatigue, shortness of breath, or difficulty of breathing. Patients may likewise experience other non-specific symptoms such as sore throat, nasal congestion, headache, diarrhea, nausea and vomiting, and loss of smell, which is commonly known as anosmia, or loss of taste, known as ageusia, preceding the onset of the respiratory symptoms. Now, the severe symptoms include like difficulty of breathing or breathlessness while speaking. There will be a constant pain or pressure in the chest, paleness or cold, clammy skin, confusion, changes in mental state, or unresponsiveness. Next slide, please. Now, pay attention on how we classify the different cases. A suspect case is a person who meets the clinical and the epidemiological criteria, which means symptoms and exposure. Now, the probable case is a patient who meets the clinical criteria, that means with symptoms, and is a contact of a probable or confirmed case or linked to a COVID-19 cluster with the addition of chest findings such as pneumonia or has anosmia or ageusia. Now, the third one is a confirmed case. A confirmed case is a person with a positive nucleic acid amplification test or a person with a positive rapid antigen test, which meets either the probable case definition or the suspect criteria. Now, an asymptomatic person with a positive rapid antigen who is also a contact of a probable or confirmed case. Next slide, please. Now, this slide is very interesting because as of yesterday, August 3rd, there were about 6,879 new cases, wherein 6,337 recoveries and 48 deaths, which makes up the overall number of cases at 1.6, almost over 1.6 million, with almost 4% of total active cases at 63,317. 94.3% recoveries at 1.5 million, and 1.75% total deaths at 28,141. Now, the active cases were mild or asymptomatic at about 95.3%. Now, the Philippine Genome Center Biosurveillance Report as of July 28 shows the different variants, as you can see in the slide, that are present already in the Philippines, with data on active, recovered, and deceased cases. Now, if you would look closely at this slide over to the right-hand side, it tells us the increasing numbers of the Delta variants in the country. There were actually 17 new cases reported last July 22, followed by 55 cases 2 days after, and actually 97 cases on July 28, which now convey local transmission. Next slide, please. So some of you might ask, so why do mutations occur? Mutations are actually genetic changes in a virus. So when a virus acquires mutations different from the original strain, it is called a mutant. Variants can differ by one or more mutations. It is normal and it occurs all the time. The more it multiplies, the more chance to mutate. Now, viruses constantly change through mutation, and new variants of a virus are expected to occur. Sometimes they emerge, sometimes they disappear. Other times, new variants persist. Now, multiple variants that causes COVID-19 have been documented in the United States and globally during this pandemic. Now, this table actually shows you the different variants, which is called the alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. Now, this just shows us that this virus can spread across countries or continents with high prevalence, affecting significant proportion of world's population. Next slide, please. Now, in an update actually made last May 31st, released by the World Health Organization, an expert group convened by the WHO has come up with a new nomenclature system in naming the SARS-CoV-2. Genetic lineages would be easier for us, for most of us, to use by non-scientific audiences, which are non-stigmatizing, to places where they were first identified. The recommendation was to use the different letters of the Greek alphabet. So you can see the alpha, the beta, the gamma, to label the variants. Now, as such, the variant of interest, as you can see, the P.3, which was first detected in the Philippines, is now labeled as theta. The WHO updated the definitions last July 6 and came up with two working definitions: the variant of interest, or the VOI, or the VOC, which is the variant of concern, which is based on the degree of global public health significance. Now, what is a variant of concern? It is actually has an increased transmissibility or detrimental change in COVID-19 epidemiology, or there could be an increase in virulence or change in the clinical disease presentation, or a decrease in the effectiveness of public health and social measures or available diagnostics, vaccines, and therapeutics. While the variant of interest actually have genetic changes that are predicted or known to affect the virus characteristics such as transmissibility, disease severity, immune escape, diagnostic, or therapeutic escape. They are also identified to cause community transmission. Multiple COVID-19 cases clusters has been detected alongside increasing number of cases of wartime. Now, we know now that the Delta variant is becoming more prevalent in many countries, including the Philippines, where recent cases of local transmission have been reported. Now, Dr. Edsel Maurice Salvana, who is a member of the Technical Advisory Group for Coronavirus, discussed the Delta variant as a virus following confirmation of local transmission. He explained that the Delta variant is the fastest and the fittest among the existing variants of COVID-19. It is 60% more transmissible than the Alpha, which is the UK variant. It is 3 times more contagious than the original SARS-CoV-2 virus, wherein one patient with Delta can infect up to 8 people. It seems to be deadlier, worse if healthcare system is overwhelmed. Patients get sicker. Younger ages actually develop severe disease and 1,000 times greater viral upload. It has a longer duration of infectiousness. It has a faster time to becoming infectious from time of exposure. Highly contagious when asymptomatic. And it only requires less than 15 minutes contact time, and it can already be transmitted. Well, despite the threats posed by the said variant, the same treatment applies for Delta. Strong compliance to the minimum public health standards, such as wearing of face mask, face shield, and observance of physical distancing and strict border controls can help protect the public and prevent further spread of the virus. He also calls for the continuous rollout of vaccination against COVID-19, as reports show that the number of deaths goes down in countries with high vaccination rate. The current protocols in the country can help delay the surge, but Filipinos are still susceptible not until they receive the vaccination against the virus. Next slide, please. This slide shows the vaccine statistics as of August 1st, which covers from March to August 1st, with total doses administered at 20.8, almost 20.9 million, comprising of 11.7 million for the first dose and 9 million for the second dose who are fully vaccinated. Now, the average daily administered doses in the last 7 days is 523,018 for, in the last 7 days was 523,018. Now, for week 22, which was last week, an additional 3.6 million individuals were vaccinated. Also shown are the weekly doses administered, and priority population are also shown on this slide. Now, the average number of active reporting vaccination sites in the last 7 days is at 1,465. Next slide, please. Now, as part of our national government vaccination program, we needed to also help others find the reason to get vaccinated. So INTELLICARE conducted a vaccination survey amongst its employees from Asalus, Avega, and Aventus. A considerable low turnout was noted in the initial survey, as you can see in the slide, done in the first quarter of the year, which actually doubled in terms of respondents by April of this year. The questions that we included were, are you willing to be inoculated with the Moderna vaccine? Do you want your immediate dependents to be vaccinated with the Moderna COVID vaccine? Now, for the INTELLICARE group, the consolidated result showed willingness to have the vaccine, with 70% answered yes immediately. And those with responses as no, thank you, showed actually the number one reason was being afraid at 48%. And those with comorbidities and pre-existing conditions at 16%. While some of our people have been inoculated in the respective LGUs, we have started a vaccination of our employees in our very own Aventus Clinic in Cubao and Quezon City. And we are looking forward to an intensive vaccine rollout in the coming months, as the vaccines are made available now to the private sector via the buying groups. Now, next slide, please. Now, To allay some fears actually that lead to vaccine hesitancy, we need to get informed decisions based on reliable sources. There's actually so much information available on COVID-19 vaccines through the internet via the social media, which causes what is called the infodemic, which is also spreading a lot of misinformation. Therefore, it is our responsibility to be able to curate that information, check the sources, and validate the content. An example is as follows, which is the myths and facts, which are also available in the CDC, WHO, and DOH. Now, some of the myths, and which allow me to read it. Was it rushed? Is it safe? On the contrary, there were no safety shortcuts. Large studies show that the COVID-19 vaccine is safe. One of the second myth is that it changes your DNA. The fact on the matter is it is impossible for the COVID-19 vaccine to change your DNA. Some might think that it can give you COVID-19. Remember, the COVID-19 vaccine does not contain the live virus, so it cannot give you COVID-19. Some of the myths is that it contains some egg protein. It does not contain egg protein and can be given to people with egg allergies. It causes severe side effects. As I said, there are side effects, so the severe side effects are rare. The COVID-19 vaccine mostly causes mild side effects that resolve in a few days. Another one is that it makes women infertile. There's actually no evidence that the COVID-19 vaccine causes infertility. Next slide, please. Now, the next question that most of you might have, can I get vaccinated? And the answer to that is yes, but with special precautions on 3 scenarios. Those with history of bleeding disorder or currently taking blood thinners, those who have allergy to food, egg, or medicine, and those with history of asthma. Next slide, please. Now, the answer is yes, but for rescheduling. On what scenarios, you might ask. If you are currently diagnosed with COVID-19 or with symptoms, such as what is stated in the slide, therefore, you may not be able to get the vaccine at this time, so you would have to reschedule it. The second is if you have history of exposure with a confirmed or suspected case of COVID-19 in the last 14 days and have not completed the 14-day isolation or quarantine, then the answer is you are for rescheduling. If you have received convalescent plasma or monoclonal antibodies in the last 90 days, then it is yes, but for rescheduling. And also for women in the first 3 months of pregnancy, if you have received other vaccines such as flu, pneumonia vaccines, but not limited to in the last 14 days. If you had attacks and you have been admitted or changed medications in the last 3 months. And lastly, if you have hypertensive emergency or blood pressure more than 180 over 120 with symptoms of possible organ damage. Next slide, please. Now, you may need clearance from your attending physician or primary care provider if you have an autoimmune disease. If one has a human immunodeficiency virus, if one has cancer patients, if you have cancer currently undergoing chemotherapy, radiotherapy, or immunotherapy, if one is currently taking steroid medications, and if one is bedridden in a vegetative state, or poor prognosis with life expectancy less than 6 months. Now, there are only 3 scenarios wherein one cannot receive the COVID-19 vaccine as of this time. If you know somebody who is less than 18 years old, if one is allergic to any vaccine component, such as the polysorbate or polyethylene glycol, if one has a severe allergic reaction or anaphylaxis to the first dose of the vaccine. Next slide, please. COVID-19 vaccines actually can be given to senior citizens who are considered at risk of developing the severe disease. The real-world data show vaccination reduced the risk of COVID-19 hospitalization among 65 and older. The COVID-19 vaccine may be given to individuals with comorbidities. Remember, there is a higher risk of severe COVID-19 infection if you have heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, asthma, and other respiratory diseases and cancer. And a medical clearance and certification from your attending physician may be necessary. It can be given to individuals with medications for these chronic conditions or comorbidities, and individuals who are immunocompromised or have HIV or autoimmune disease, provided that their health status is stable. Lastly, the COVID-19 vaccines may also be given to children and pregnant women who were initially not included in the early phases of the clinical trials. But as ongoing studies and trials continue, they are now included, and we wait for the results of these studies before this year ends. Next slide, please. As of now, there are actually 8 known COVID-19 vaccines. 7 are now available in the Philippines with emergency use authorization, or the EUA, which are the Pfizer, the AstraZeneca, the Sinovac, the Sputnik, the Johnson & Johnson, the Covaxin, Moderna, and Novavax. There are different technology platforms like mRNA, which are the Pfizer and the Moderna, the inactivated virus, which are the Sinovac and the Bharat Biotech, and a viral vector, which is the AstraZeneca and Janssen, and a protein subunit, which is the Novavax. There are different storage requirements as stated here in the slide, and different doses. Most are given in 2 doses only. Janssen is given as 1 dose. And the frequency can vary from 21 days, 28 days, and 4 to 12 weeks apart, depending on the type of vaccine one would be administered. Next slide, please. The message given by the experts is this: if we get a breakthrough infections after we have ourselves vaccinated, the symptoms are going to be mild. And because the symptoms are mild, then we will avoid hospitalization and we will not die from COVID-19. Next slide, please. So where are we now? Actually, this is one of my favorite slides because it really shows you the different layers of success. There's actually a personal responsibility and a shared responsibility. No single intervention is perfect at preventing the spread of the coronavirus. We have our own responsibility. As a unit, we all together would have to do our part. Next slide, please. The Interagency Task Force has come with several versions of the priority population group, with the initial list showing, if you would remember, the A1 to A5, the B and the C, where in the A1 group are the healthcare workers, the A2 are the senior citizens, and the A3 are those with comorbidities. The A4 list was revised, which included A4.1 to A4.13 by the second week of April, which was further expanded to include essential workers from A4.1 to A4.17. Now, finally, on May 28th, the priority group, the IATF, adopted a simplified A4 vaccination priority group as follows. So the private sector workers required to be physically present at their designated workplace outside of their residences. It also included employees in government agencies and instrumentalities, including government-owned and controlled corporations and local government units. Also, the informal sector workers and self-employed who may be required to work outside their residences, and those working in private households. Now, let me turn you over to our next speaker who will discuss the government action plans. The floor is yours, Maggie.
Good afternoon, everyone. So next slide, please. For looking into the Philippine scenario, COVID-19 has contracted around 1.6 million of our Filipino people, causing almost 28,000 deaths, and is still infecting with the emergence of the Delta variant. Now, DOH implemented since 2020 its 4-door strategy through the National Action Plan against COVID-19. Now, this 4-door strategy is all about prevention, detection, isolation, quarantine, treatment, and reintegration. Now, this could be seen and this was now intensified as the emergence of the Delta virus is now being controlled. Now, this four-door approach is seen in the implementation of lockdowns, border controls, quarantine facilities, emergence of the different kinds of tests from antigen test to RT-PCR swab, and also the detection of the variant through our DOH and the UP Genome Center, as well as the UP National Institute for Health. Now, variants of concern, such as Delta variants, are usually detected through genome sequencing done in the samples of the RT-PCR test that those who got positive already on this RT-PCR test. Now, with the integration, the government also targets the socioeconomic recovery. With the socioeconomic recovery strategy, the government aims and introduced to us the new normal. The new normal can be seen in the businesses with the implementation of the alternative workforce arrangements, such as skeletal workforce and work from home arrangement. Now, with this integration, they also strategize for a full recovery of the socio-economic system. So this socio-economic recovery strategy encompasses the COVID-19 vaccination program. So zeroing in into the COVID vaccination intervention of our government, government signed into law the COVID-19 Vaccination Program Act of 2021. Now, this government act includes an indemnity clause that gives immunity from claims or lawsuits of manufacturers of any public or private entity duly authorized by the government involved in the administration of the vaccination for COVID. Now, though it may seem not to hold liability on those mentioned earlier, our government allotted this indemnity fund of around 500 billion pesos managed by the PhilHealth. This coverage is for those who got vaccinated and has adverse reaction that resulted to either death, permanent disability, or hospitalization. Now, next slide, please. Our government furthered its vaccination intervention through the DOH with the guidance of the WHO through the release of the National Deployment and Vaccination Plan for COVID-19. Now, this plan details the government's steps in dealing with the pandemic through the vaccination programs. Now, this is supposed to run from 2021 to 2023. It's a whole society approach wherein it aims to protect and get all Filipinos vaccinated. The plan laid out a roadmap with these 7 steps. Now, the first step was the vaccine selection. This is done by the expert panels of DOH and FDA. A short list of this vaccine from the government was mentioned by Doctora earlier. Now we have Moderna, Pfizer, AstraZeneca, Sinovac, Novavax, Janssen, Gamaleya, and Covaxin of Bharat Biotech. The authorization given to this shortlisted vaccine is what we call as an emergency use authorization. Now, this emergency use authorization is used for products during public health emergencies, such as this COVID pandemic. Prior to issuing this EUA, this FDA and RDOH went to this rigorous testing of this to have the vaccine safe and efficacy tested. Now, as of today, with the EUA in place, this COVID vaccine is not for commercial use, meaning it cannot be sold in any other places. Now, how do we access these vaccines? Now, our government access these vaccines. One is through the COVAX facility that was reported last night. The COVAX already sent 3 million Moderna for us. This is a global mechanism powered by WHO, which gives donations to countries such as the Philippines. That's one access. The other access is through bilateral agreements, like through ADP or the World Bank, or other countries such as China or Japan that donates to us. Now, another access of the government through of the vaccines is through the tripartite agreement of the private sector, DOH, and the manufacturers of the vaccines. Now, when it comes to the master listing, now master listing has something to do with enlisting all eligible populations. Nowadays, we have 2 ways of enlisting population. One is through the local government, and the other one is now through the private sector procurement, wherein the OH and LGU gave access to VIMS-IR, or a template that you will be enlisting eligible populations. Now, when it comes to distribution, our government is aiming to have equity of distribution to all the population, meaning they are aiming to have a herd immunity, and one should be vaccinated all throughout for 2 doses. And no booster shot is still encouraged as of the moment. Now, for the implementation of the vaccination, implementation can be seen through the LGUs nowadays and through the private sectors and healthcare service providers. Now, monitoring and evaluation of this COVID vaccination adverse reactions is through the FDA, TOH, as well as LGU in partnership with the healthcare service provider that inoculated those people. Now, another interesting advisory that was released by the government is the DOLA Advisory Number 3 Series of 2021, in which you would see that there is supposed to be no cost of vaccination in the workplace shall be charged against or passed on to the employer, may it be direct or indirect. Another thing is that it protects the worker, those doesn't want to be vaccinated, for being discriminated or terminated in the workplace. Next slide, please. Now, this is the summary of the roadmap that I discussed. Being informed will help not only protect but also save lives. Here's a summary, as what I have mentioned earlier, from the selection to assessment and monitoring. Now, as information about characteristics of the variants is rapidly emerging, scientists are working more about easily the spread of the virus, how can this be protected, and these vaccines protect us from the virus. Our government is now intensifying the implementation of the nationwide vaccine program to the partnership of those different sectors, such as our private sector. Now, since it has been said that COVID-19 vaccines are safe and effective at preventing COVID-19, this includes the Delta variant. Now, this also includes the prevention of severe illness, hospitalization, and death, including the infected ones with the Delta variant, as mentioned earlier. Now, in this adapt to change, it's but natural that we have some apprehensions regarding the vaccines and also the Delta variant. So I'll turn you over to our moderator for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie, for the very interesting topic, and Dr. Sally. For now, we will be introducing some of the few questions we've had. And for the participants, please feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom so that we can be more interactive in this topic. Okay, for Dr. Sally, there's one question here. I would like to ask if there's data in terms of Sinovac's efficacy against the Delta variant.
All right. Hi, Maida. So right now, there is no current study that will validate that it is effective against the Delta variant. However, I think that goes for all of the vaccines that we have right now. You have to remember when these vaccines were conceptualized or were started, we were only dealing with the original COVID-19 virus. So it is actually a ongoing study. But what we know right now is that the current vaccine, or the Sinovac that you're asking about, it can protect you from having any severe infections from the COVID virus itself.
Thank you for that, Doctora. Another question here, is it okay to receive Moderna vaccine even if you already receive other brands like Sinovac and AstraZeneca?
Okay. So that is more like, the question is more of like a combination of different vaccines. Is that correct, Maida?
Yes, Doctora.
Okay. There is an advisory actually released by the Philippine Society for Microbiology and Infectious Disease, which the CDC and the WHO actually are aligned with, that it is the standard, the primary series of COVID-19 vaccines be completed as recommended. So that means same product at the prescribed interval. There is no study that supports, that is validated, peer-reviewed medically, that we can do mix and match at this time.
Oh, so that would be fine, Doctora. That
We can
and match.
We cannot
We
mix and
cannot.
match. We have to make sure that it is, if you took Sinovac, the first dose, then the second dose should be Sinovac as well. So there is no study that supports that we can do mix and match. It is a recommendation that the completed series of vaccines of the same brand be used at the prescribed interval.
All right, thank you for that, Doctora. Another question here is a positive antigen test result after the first dose of any vaccine dangerous, which would need the usual isolation, quarantine, and the like? After the first dose, Doctora, is it dangerous, which would need the usual isolation, quarantine after having the first dose? The patient have had been contaminated with or have been positive with antigen test. The question is it dangerous? Is it more dangerous probably?
So the question is, the person received the COVID-19 vaccine and then tested positive for rapid antigen. Is that the question?
After the first dose, yes.
After the first dose, is it dangerous? Now, syempre, no, I mean, the dangerous part is actually can be objective and subjective. Now, at the medical standpoint for doctors, to be objective in that, what we would monitor is that if there is shortness of breath, any symptoms that are severe that is present with the patient. It could be, I'm not sure if the question is pertaining to naging positive ba yung rapid antigen because nagka-COVID-19 vaccine siya? Or is that the question, Maida? Or is
after the first dose, Doctora, you have had,
okay, so after the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccine, the patient turned out to have a positive rapid antigen test. So is it dangerous? To answer that, it is not dangerous unless you are manifesting severe symptoms. One is not related to the other. One is separate. So it could be that the rapid antigen is positive is because there was an exposure with a confirmed, probable, or suspect case. It has nothing to do with the COVID-19 vaccination.
So what we need to stand by is whether there's whether the patient is having a severe effect already of the symptoms. All right.
And also, when in doubt, and you have symptoms, it doesn't really hurt to really call your doctor and reach out and get medical advice and probably to have an assessment on what's going on, because there could be any underlying medical conditions or infections that is present that we could possibly treat, not necessarily COVID alone. But because of the times that we always have to rule out the most serious one, which is the COVID-19.
All right. So another question, Doctor, is that the day after first dose, lots of phlegm in the morning for 2 days. Would probably, Doctor, this is a consultation for you.
All right. I have Dr. Lindy here, who's a pulmonologist. You may want to take that, Lindy.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, Mamay, can you please repeat the question?
First, sorry, is that from Miss Pamela?
Yes. Maida, can you repeat the question? Dr. Lindy would be answering the question regarding that. She's one of our pulmonologists.
All right. The question is, the day after first dose, lots of phlegm in the morning for 2 days. Went off when talking. Since then, doctor said it's possible I had allergy from vaccine. She was scheduled to get second vaccine this Friday. Is it safe to get second vaccine while still having problem of coughing, especially when talking, but condition is not as bad 4 weeks ago?
Okay. So the symptoms appeared after the first dose?
After the first, the day after the first dose.
And then it persisted for how long?
Phlegm has been for 2 days already and have been coughing when talking since then. Then doctor said it's possible I had allergy from vaccine. The doctor said
Yes.
it is possibly because of the allergy from vaccine. And then she was
Mm-hmm.
scheduled to get second vaccine this Friday. And is it safe to get second vaccine while still having problem of coughing, especially when talking, but condition is not bad as 4 weeks ago?
Yeah, okay. So actually, after receiving the vaccine, we know that there are some side effects or adverse effects that are expected, like flu-like symptoms, pain on the injection site. But studies say that most of the symptoms are self-limited, so they usually go away in 2 to 3 days. But the recommendation is that if the symptoms really persist beyond 3 days, and the symptoms are the same as yung symptoms for COVID, we know that the symptoms are cough or fever, then you might as well do a ano, PCR siguro to make sure that um, you do not have COVID. Kasi we know that full protection naman is not achieved until we receive the 2 doses, or actually 2 weeks after the 2 doses are given. So it's still possible that in between the first and second dose, pwede ka pa rin magka-contract ng infection. So just make sure it's part of the suggestions or recommendations that if ever the symptoms persist beyond 3 days and the symptoms get worse, then you can do an RT-PCR test just to make sure you do not have COVID.
Okay, I hope we're able to answer your question, Ms. Gay Del Rio. Another question here from an anonymous attendee. Why is J&J vaccine 1 dose only, unlike with the other 7 vaccines? It has 2 doses. So, Dr. Sally and Aventus team, would you know the reason behind why is J&J vaccine takes only 1 dose to be vaccinated? And
to be quite honest, I only know about the Moderna and AstraZeneca because that is what we carry, what we are administering to our patients. But because it is the way that the Johnson and Johnson, it is the way it was made in terms of how it was made in the laboratory in terms of the virus. So if I could get back to you on that, and if you can get the email, and I would really get back to that attendee, and I will answer that. So I just have to do some clarification on my end before I answer that one. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Doctora. So for all the participants, I just would like you to know that there are a lot more questions of around 75. Probably we'll be unable to respond to you all right now, but surely IntelliCare together with Aventus will be sending you responses through your email addresses. So thank you for indulging with us today. Probably we'll just get 2 more questions for Aventus. So there were reports of blood clots on brain, respiratory, and gastro area on some vaccine brand. The news died down apparently. Is there any update on this, Doctora?
Right now, there is none. We have to, I know there were some certain news, but the patients involved in those cases, they have other underlying medical conditions. So it's just more of like an incidental finding that they actually had the COVID-19 vaccine. But the COVID-19, like any other medication, any vaccines, they always have risks. But we always have to remember that the benefits outweigh the risk. It actually depends on, not everyone are cut into the same cloth is what I'm trying to say. One may have more medical conditions or comorbidities than the other, or one may have more exposure or have a different living condition than the other, so which makes one more susceptible to have those conditions. But as far as your question is concerned, there are no updates, but there are no studies that would validate with a significant number of data that it really does cause blood clots for strokes. Thank you.
Okay. So probably this will be our last question for Dr. Sally. Since it's our job for a jab. The question is Moderna fully approved by FDA already, not just emergency shots?
You know, lahat it's the EUA. Even if it's FDA approved and it's not approved in the emergency use authorization, it cannot be used. As far as I know, and I think if Dr. Weka is here, do you know any information about the Moderna? But I know it's just approved for EUA. Go ahead.
Dr. Maggie here.
Go
For
ahead, Maggie.
Moderna and all other vaccines right now of COVID-19, the FDA and DOH just approved it as an emergency use authorization.
Yeah.
No commercial use authorization is given to any COVID-19 vaccine as of the moment, and no other EUA was given for these vaccines to be booster shots on those vaccines that were already fully vaccinated. For example, you already have your Sinovac as full dose. Moderna, you want it as a booster shot. There is no approved usage of this to any. In all countries under WHO's guidance, they also issue EUA for those vaccines. However, depending on also the manufacturer where they submit. So if the manufacturer doesn't submit to that country any applications for EUA, the country does not approve it. So as of the moment, these all vaccines were tested for efficacy and safety by our expert panels of DOH and FDA. So it's for emergency use, all of these vaccines, regardless if it's Moderna or Sinovac or other types of vaccines.
Okay, so thank you for that, ma'am. I was advised that we can still accommodate few more questions. We have like around 3 to 5 minutes. Dr. Asari, if we may. Okay, so another question is, does the dose from different vaccines which are currently given can really fight the Delta variant?
Oh, all right. Now, I think I answered that question. When it comes to the Delta variant, it's still under study whether all the vaccines are effective in combating the Delta variant. But what we are trying to share with everyone, that regardless of what type of COVID vaccine that you may have, it will protect you to have those severe infections. It will add another layer of protection. So the deadliest part of the variant is a Delta variant, but there are other types of variants that we are trying to combat. But as far as what we know right now, as I speak right now, there is no significant or there's no peer-reviewed data that will say that this vaccine is effective with the Delta variant. It's still ongoing. That's why there are talks on booster, but it is not being recommended at this time. It's an ongoing study amongst the different medical experts who are reviewing the vaccines.
Doc Sally, this is Raka Gurangan. I just wanted to share that from the DOH announcements made in the past 2 days, that so far, based on their study, or at least the recording that they have had so far, that those unvaccinated people are the only ones that are getting COVID, and that includes Delta. So I think the message really is get everybody vaccinated as soon as we can, so we can fight this COVID. What's important is that we're seeing that only unvaccinated individuals are getting the COVID. So whether it's Delta or any other variant, I think we just need to get vaccinated really as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thanks, Rak.
Thank you, Ms. Raquel, and thank you for being with us today. We'd like to acknowledge your presence as well. So there's another one question here. Probably this will be the second to the last, as there are really a lot of questions around Doctora. So hi, is there a way for us to test how good is our antibody after being fully vaccinated? Probably Aventus has that, right, Dr. Sally?
Yes, we do have that quantitative, and I think I will let Maggie discuss that. Go ahead, Maggie, and I will chime in.
Okay, Dr.
What are one of our products?
Yeah, it's a serum test. So it has they will take your blood, But however, it's not recommended. It doesn't necessarily mean that you get vaccinated. You should have already tested your antigen or antibody rather first prior to being vaccinated. And then after vaccination, after 2 weeks, you get already another antibody test. However, the number of antibodies that says that to get protected is not no standard or number of antibody is said to be of protection that would give you protection already. For example, if the first test you get 50 and the following test after you get vaccinated you get 100, you say that you're protected already. No, this is not a basis that the vaccine is already working or not, because the vaccine producing antibody in your body depends on one, your immunity, two, your body's system as well, and how healthy the person is. So depending on the reaction of the people or the person's body to produce antibody, that would affect the vaccine efficacy on that person. Doctor, you may add?
Well, you actually discussed everything, but yes, that's true. So when it comes to that, that test actually determines the amount of antibodies that one would make after the COVID vaccination. It is true what Maggie mentioned, that there is no specific number, but what we have is a range. So if you are higher than that range, that means you have the antibodies. So the next question, so if it's higher, so ibig sabihin, pwede na ba akong lumabas, mag-alfresco, gimmick with my friends or meet a lot of people? The question is no, not yet. I mean, it's good to know that you have the antibodies, but it doesn't give you like a security that you can not uphold the minimum public health standards. So this is more of a good to know for you that you develop antibodies, but just, a lot of our partners, employees, and patients actually avail that just for them to know if it worked or not. And mind you, it does, once you get vaccinated, it's not immediate, ha? Hindi ibig sabihin tomorrow gagawa na yung katawan mo ng vaccine, ng antibodies. It actually takes about usually 14 days to see it kung how your body reacts. And as what mentioned earlier, each person is different. Each person's immune system generates how fast, how many antibodies it would be. So some people might compare na, sa kanya 1,000, sa akin 800. So there's no good number. As long as you are above the range, that means you have the antibodies to fight the COVID virus.
All right, thank you for that, Doctora. There are a lot more requesting for the answers to their questions. Can you please accommodate more, because a lot are requesting to have this session be extended, Doctora. So we may want to really accommodate them for like a few more minutes. So is it okay to be vaccinated even you still doing breastfeeding for your 1-year-old daughter?
Okay, that's one of the common questions that are being raised, no? So the American College of Obstetrics and Gynecology and also our society here in the Philippines actually recommends that including pregnant and lactating individuals receive the COVID-19 vaccine or vaccine series. So I think best is to have them seek consultation and more discussion with their OBs. But there is no nothing that would say na it's masama or bawal if you are breastfeeding and you take the COVID-19 vaccine.
Okay, thank you for that, Doctora. That was also mentioned in your discussion earlier. There's a senior citizen question here. A senior citizen was already fully vaccinated with Sinovac some 2 months ago. However, would like to be vaccinated again with Pfizer or Moderna before he will travel to the US. Would this be okay, Doctora?
Oh my God, that's a very, how do I say it? I know. I can only tell you what is medically accepted, medically peer-reviewed. No, however, other anecdotals. The thing is, if one has received the first dose and second dose, for example, like what you mentioned for this individual, the Sinovac, for now that's good for the year for that person. Now, to get a Moderna, based on our readings and our review with our medical partners here, and even CDC does not support like a third dose. So I will not recommend based on what I know medically, because I don't know, there's not enough data that would say that it is safe, that there are no risks in the long run. So my answer to that is no.
Let me just add also that I think it's also an ethical issue and a moral issue for a lot of people, especially since the objective of the national government is to really get vaccinated as many people. And if one gets, I don't know if you've heard of the Ronnie Zamora issue a couple of weeks ago, and he announced that he has had two types of vaccines with 2 doses each. That's denying another person of vaccination that we really absolutely need. So I think the idea is to get as many people vaccinated, at least with the first and second dose of ideally one type of vaccine or one brand of vaccine. And then we'll wait for studies that will tell us that that the third or a booster or whatever is going to happen. For now, there's no study that says that we should have a booster after the second dose.
Ma'am, if I may add on that. For our experience with the LGUs and the local governments in NCR, they don't encourage that. First, because of the distribution principle of our government, which is the equity of distribution, meaning all Filipinos and more majority, which is 70%, should be fully vaccinated. So the access to the vaccine, that's one. Two is that FDA has no approval yet of mixing of vaccines. The EUA given to those vaccines are for those vaccines alone. For example, for Sinovac, the other second dose for Sinovac alone. There is no approved vaccine under EUA of FDA that says that we could already put Pfizer or Moderna as a booster shot or third dose. So as of the moment, most of the LGUs and the DOH does not recommend this.
All right. Okay. So last 2 questions. Can you share the data and information about the new COVID-19 variant? Is it true that Lambda variant more dangerous than Delta?
Alam nyo, all variants, basta COVID, ang first name, are dangerous. So I think no one will really test, but what we know is that Delta, based on studies that are published, are more highly transmissible than the rest. So anything that's COVID as a first name and the last name is a different variant is dangerous on its own, because each person, as I said, has different medical conditions, and one may be hit by the same variant, but one may be asymptomatic and the other might show some severe symptoms. So we really have to be careful, if not for ourselves, for the loved ones that we have who are not able to be vaccinated for other reasons that they may have. So I think that's it.
Okay, lastly, Doctora, so there's a complete dose of vaccine. One moment. Complete dose of vaccine does not provide us automatic immunity, right? So if that's the case, when we are still susceptible for infection during the initial days after the vaccination, please clarify if we will have the complete immunity for the virus.
Complete immunity is it's a very general term to use, right? But what we are trying to avoid, even if you get vaccinated, you have the risk of getting the infection. What we are preventing is for one to have the severe type of infection. So the complete immunity, that will vary from person to person. Even if in other vaccines that we had in the past, when it's not COVID related, there is not 100%. There are other factors that we have to consider: the medical condition of the patient, the behavior of the patient in terms of other lifestyle modification or lifestyle behavior of that person. So there's a lot of factors that we have to consider when we're talking about complete immunity.
Okay, thank you for that, Doctora. And we'd like to acknowledge all participants, 800 participants who are joining us today. And thank you for your questions. For those questions we have not accommodated, we will be sending you our responses. Aventus will surely be able to send you their responses through your email. So while we are about to end off this session, we would like to acknowledge the speakers and our panelists from Aventus Clinic. Of course, we would like to thank and award the certificates to our speakers. Thank you, Dr. Sally Gaspar, for indulging with us today, and Ms. Patricia of Aventus. On the next slide, please. Ms. Maria Angela Patricia Concepcion. Dr. Cheryl Rueco is with us as well, supplying our responses. Dr. Efrialine D. Pangan and Dr. Jeremy Ann Alcazar for imparting valuable insights and inspiration during the HR Cafe entitled "The Shots Have Been Called Breaking the Myths Behind COVID-19 Vaccination," given this 4th day of August 2021, signed by Mr. Norman Amora, our Senior Vice President for Marketing and Sales of INTELLICARE, Mr. Gerardo M. De La Cruz, Senior Assistant Vice President for INTELLICARE, and then Janet Ina Tonton, also our Assistant Vice President for Sales Department Intermediaries of INTELLICARE. Thank you, Dr. Sally and the whole team of Aventus Clinic. And without further ado, we would like also to thank everyone for joining us today. Please do follow us at our YouTube channel, follow us on our FB page, and we are looking forward again to join us on our 4th webinar, our HR Cafe. We wish you all good health, and I hope everyone is in the pink of health. I hope you're able to have a good information about the Delta variant and the cause and effects of vaccination. We bid you a good afternoon. Stay safe and be healthy. Thank you, everyone. God bless.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maida,
yes.
you might want to respond to one participant who has a very important question, I suppose, and we were not able to answer her question.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Bye-bye. Good job, everyone. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.